Once upon a time. The Part 2 of Danielle the Meat Seller. Danielle woke up early the next morning, still shaken by the gang's parting words. As she prepared to head to the market, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She reached her stall and noticed a few unusual things. The display crate had been moved slightly, and there were scuff marks on the ground as if someone had tampered with it overnight. She quickly scanned the area, her heart pounding. A note was tucked under one of the crates. With trembling hands, she picked it up and unfolded it. The message read, "Pay the price, or this is just the beginning." Danielle's mind raced. She couldn't afford to lose her stall or her livelihood. But she also couldn't give in to their demands. Her competitor, standing at his polished stall, smirked when their eyes met, as if he knew about the warning. Danielle clenched her fists. Determined not to show fear, she called out to attract customers. A few regulars approached, but the tension in the air was thick. As the day wore on, she kept looking over her shoulder, wondering what the gang's next move would be. As she packed up for the evening, Danielle noticed a shadowy figure watching her from a distance. She turned to confront them, but they vanished into the crowd. A chill ran down her spine as she realized this wasn't over. Danielle paced behind her stall, her eyes darting nervously. As the market filled with customers, Mama Iridi, the oldest vendor, approached her. The older woman had seen Danielle's struggles and whispered, "Child, the market is no place for fear." Danielle hesitated but finally opened up about the gang's threats. Mama Iridi listened intently, her weathered face tightening with concern. "They've been running this market like their kingdom for years," she said. "But you can't give in to them. We must find another way." Danielle frowned. "How?" "I'm just one person." Mama Iridi smiled faintly. "Then don't stand alone. Others here feel the same but are too scared to act." Danielle's curiosity piqued. "Others?" she asked. "Yes," Mama Iridi replied. "Meet me tonight after the market closes." That evening, as the last stalls were packed away, Danielle followed Mama Iridi to a quiet corner. A few other vendors joined them, their faces lined with worry. Mama Iridi addressed the group. "It's time we stand together." Though fear lingered, hope began to flicker in Danielle's heart. Perhaps unity was the answer she needed. The next day, Danielle noticed a delivery at her competitor's stall. The crate was strange, marked with an unfamiliar logo and delivered by men who seemed out of place in the busy market. She couldn't shake the feeling something was amiss. As the delivery men left, she discreetly followed, keeping her distance. They carried the crate to a nearby truck and spoke in hushed tones. Danielle edged closer, her heart pounding as she caught fragments of their conversation. "Keep it quiet. Authorities can't find out," one said. Her suspicions deepened. Her rival wasn't just undercutting her prices, he was dealing in something shady. That night, she shared her findings with Mama Iridi. "If we can prove this, we might have a way to stop them," Danielle said. Mama Iridi nodded gravely. They agreed to investigate further. Another vendor, Ade, offered to track the delivery route while Danielle focused on watching the rivals' activities. "If we're careful, we'll find the truth," Mama Iridi said. Though terrified of being discovered, Danielle felt a renewed sense of purpose. The gang's presence in the market grew more oppressive. Danielle noticed them lingering near her stall, their cold stares unrelenting. Customers hesitated to approach her, whispering nervously. One afternoon, two gang members confronted her. "You think you're clever, don't you?" one sneered. "This market isn't yours to save." Danielle's voice trembled but held firm. "I'm not afraid of you," she replied. The man laughed darkly. "You should be," he said before walking away. That evening, Danielle found her stall vandalized. Crates were smashed, and her tools were missing. She clenched her fists, refusing to cry. The next morning, with the help of Mama Iridi and Ade, she repaired the damage. Other vendors began whispering about her resilience, some offering quiet support. Though the gang tried to isolate her, Danielle's determination shone brighter than ever. Late one evening, Danielle spotted her rival meeting with the gang in a dimly lit corner of the market. She watched from a distance as they exchanged envelopes and spoke in hushed tones. Her breath quickened. She needed evidence to expose their connection. Quietly, she slipped closer, her steps careful. She overheard snippets of their conversation. "This delivery needs to stay under the radar," the rival said. "No mistakes." Danielle's heart pounded. She hurried away, knowing she had uncovered something crucial. The next day, she shared her findings with Mama Iridi and Ade. "We're getting closer," Ade said, his voice steady. "But we need more proof." Determined, Danielle began keeping a journal of every suspicious activity she observed, hoping it would eventually be enough to take to the authorities. The market buzzed with its usual noise, but Danielle couldn't shake the weight of her discovery. As she set up her stall, she noticed the gang members watching her again, their eyes filled with cold intent. Her rival's smirk was sharper today, as if he knew something she didn't. Mama Iridi passed by and gave Danielle a reassuring nod, whispering, "Keep your head high, child. They thrive on fear." Danielle tried to stay calm, but tension hung thick in the air. Midday, a scuffle broke out near her stall. Two gang members accused one of Danielle's customers of theft. It was a blatant lie, but it disrupted her sales as other customers fled the scene. Danielle clenched her fists. "Enough. Stop harassing my customers," she shouted. The gang member turned to her, a sinister grin spreading across his face. "This is your warning. Stay in your lane, meat seller." That night, Danielle met Mama Iridi and Ade again. "They're escalating," Danielle said. "We need to act soon." Ade nodded. "I've been tracking their movements. There's a warehouse where they seem to meet at night. It could be where they hide the illegal goods." The group agreed to investigate, knowing the risk was greater than ever. Danielle, Mama Iridi, and Ade stood outside the darkened warehouse, their hearts racing. The faint hum of voices and the glow of lights confirmed activity inside. "We can't go in blind," Mama Iridi warned. Ade pulled out a small camera. "I'll get close and take pictures," he said. Danielle and Mama Iridi kept watch as he crept closer to the warehouse. Inside, the gang was unloading crates similar to those Danielle had seen at the market. Ade snapped photos of the symbols on the crates and the faces of the men handling them. His hands shook as he realized some of the gang members were armed. Suddenly, a shout rang out. "Hey! Who's there?" Ade ducked behind a stack of crates, his heart pounding. Danielle and Mama Iridi froze, watching from the shadows. After a tense moment, the gang resumed their work, dismissing the noise as an animal. Ade returned to the group, his face pale. "I got the photos," he said. "This is the proof we need." Danielle felt a flicker of hope. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, Danielle arrived at the market to find chaos. A section of stalls had been set on fire overnight, including hers. Ashes and charred wood littered the ground, and the smell of smoke lingered in the air. Danielle's knees buckled as she stared at the ruins of her stall. Other vendors rushed to her side, offering comfort. "They're trying to break you," Mama Iridi said firmly. "But they won't win." Danielle wiped her tears and stood tall. "I'm not giving up," she said. With the help of the vendors, she began rebuilding her stall from whatever materials they could salvage. By midday, her stall was partially restored. Customers trickled back, impressed by her resilience. Danielle's determination inspired others to stand up against the gang's intimidation. The gang's leader appeared at the market, his presence sending a ripple of fear through the crowd. He approached Danielle's stall, his voice low but menacing. "This is your final warning. Next time, it won't just be your stall that burns." Danielle met his gaze, refusing to back down. "Do what you must," she said. "I'm not afraid of you." As Danielle packed up for the day, a young man approached her stall. He wore a baseball cap pulled low over his face and spoke in a hushed tone. "I know what's happening," he said. Danielle narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" "My name's Chijioke," he said. "I used to work for them, the gang. I left when I saw how far they were willing to go." Danielle's pulse quickened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to help," Chijioke said. "I know where they keep their records. If we can get those, it'll be enough to bring them down." Danielle hesitated, unsure if she could trust him. Mama Iridi joined the conversation, her gaze sharp. "If you're lying, you'll answer to us," she warned. "I'm not lying," Chijioke said. "Meet me tomorrow night. I'll show you everything." Though wary, Danielle agreed. She couldn't let fear hold her back now. The next night, Danielle, Mama Iridi, Ade, and Chijioke met under the cover of darkness. Chijioke led them to a run-down building on the outskirts of the city. "This is where they keep their records," he whispered, pointing to a locked storage room. Danielle's heart pounded. "How do we get in?" she asked. Chijioke pulled out a set of keys. "I stole these before I left," he said. "But we have to move fast. They'll know if something's missing." The group entered the building cautiously. Inside, the room was filled with dusty file cabinets and stacks of paper. Chijioke directed them to a cabinet labeled Market Operations. Danielle and Ade rifled through the files, their hands trembling. They found documents detailing the gang's illegal activities, including shipments of tainted meat and bribes to keep authorities silent. Mama Iridi snapped photos of the evidence with Ade's camera. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Someone's coming," Danielle whispered. They hurriedly hid behind the cabinets as a gang member entered the room. He scanned the area but didn't notice them. After a tense moment, the man left. The group exhaled in relief and quickly gathered the files they needed. As they exited the building, Danielle knew they were closer to exposing the gang, but the danger was far from over. The next day, Danielle and Mama Iridi delivered the evidence to a trusted journalist. "This could blow the lid off their entire operation," the journalist said. "But it'll take time to verify and publish." Back at the market, Danielle noticed a change in the atmosphere. Word had spread about the fire at her stall, and vendors began rallying behind her. "We're tired of living in fear," one vendor said. "We'll stand with you." The gang, however, wasn't backing down. That afternoon, they stormed the market, smashing stalls and intimidating vendors. Danielle stood her ground, her voice steady as she said, "You won't scare us anymore." The gang leader laughed. "You're brave, meat seller, but bravery won't save you." As they left, Danielle felt a mix of fear and determination. The journalist had promised to publish the story soon, but she knew the gang wouldn't wait quietly. Chijioke arrived at Danielle's house that evening, his face pale. "They know someone stole the records," he said. "They're looking for me." Danielle's stomach sank. "What do we do?" "We need to lay low," Chijioke replied. "But I think there's a leak in the group. Someone might be feeding them information." The thought chilled Danielle. She trusted Mama Iridi and Ade, but could she be sure about everyone? "We need to stay united," Mama Iridi said. "But we must be careful who we trust." The next day, Danielle noticed one of the vendors acting strangely. He avoided eye contact and seemed nervous around the gang. That night, she and Ade followed him. To their horror, they saw him meeting with a gang member, handing over a piece of paper. "He's the informant," Ade whispered. Danielle clenched her fists. The betrayal stung, but they had to act wisely. Exposing him now could put their entire plan in jeopardy. The annual market festival was just days away, and Danielle saw an opportunity. The event would draw crowds, including local officials and journalists. If they could reveal the gang's crimes during the festival, it would be impossible for the gang to cover up. The group worked tirelessly to prepare. Mama Iridi gathered vendors to support the plan, while Ade and Chijioke monitored the gang's movements. Meanwhile, Danielle focused on rebuilding her stall, determined to show she wouldn't be broken. The night before the festival, the gang leader approached Danielle. "Enjoy your little celebration," he said with a sneer. "It might be your last." Danielle's heart raced, but she didn't let him see her fear. "We'll see about that," she replied. As the festival day dawned, the market buzzed with energy. Danielle and her allies were ready, but they knew the gang wouldn't go down without a fight. The festival was in full swing, with music, dancing, and crowds filling the market. Danielle's stall was bustling with customers, but her eyes constantly scanned for danger. At the designated time, Ade signaled to the journalist, who began speaking to officials about the evidence. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the center of the market. Gang members were causing chaos, overturning stalls and scaring customers. The gang leader stepped forward, his voice booming. "This market belongs to us. Anyone who thinks otherwise will pay the price." Danielle stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "Your reign of terror ends today." The gang leader laughed. "You think you can stop us, meat seller? You're nothing." Before Danielle could respond, police officers arrived, drawn by the chaos and the journalist's report. The gang leader's face twisted with rage as the officers began questioning him and his men. Just as the police started investigating, a gang member stepped forward, shouting, "She's lying. She planted that evidence to frame us." Danielle's stomach dropped as the crowd murmured uncertainly. The gang leader smirked, seizing the moment. "This is all a setup," he declared. "And you're falling for it." Mama Iridi stepped forward, her voice steady. "We have the proof, and we won't be silenced." She handed over the photos and documents to the police, who began examining them. The gang leader's confidence wavered, but before the officers could act, a deafening explosion shook the market. A nearby stall had been rigged with explosives, sending the crowd into a panic. In the chaos, the gang leader and his men fled. Danielle's heart pounded as she realized the fight wasn't over. The market lay in ruins, but she vowed to rebuild, not just the stalls, but the courage of those who had stood with her.